breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season, except for might be off for a couple of days with the bye week coming up, but we'll fill you in on that. Brought to you by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Acadia and Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. I'm Jeff Diamond, former Vikings GM, former Tennessee Titans president. Our producer is Sam Bird. Does a great job getting our show all put together, and all those highlights and interviews that we're pulling in advance of this big game across the pond, Sam.
Yes.
In London, England, jolly old England, the Vikings and Jets will play on Sunday morning, 8:30 a.m., folks.
Yes.
Central Time. That's about, 2:30 or so on in London
back
time.
Over in London, yeah.
Yes. So it should be a really interesting game, interesting matchup. Vikings go in 4-0, undefeated. Jets 2-2 after a, shall we call it a disheartening, disappointing, devastating loss at home. 10-9 they lost to Denver. Kind of brutal in a lot of ways for the Jets.
Yes. I think those are the kind words that you can use to describe that loss. I think very disappointing. I saw a stat, I don't know if this is true or not, but both the Giants and the Jets played home games this past weekend, and there was not a single touchdown scored by either team. So you can't make that up.
No, the Giants haven't scored, I think, in 4 home games in a row.
Right.
And, you talk about coaches on the hot seat. Well, we're going to see one of them this week. That's Robert Saleh, the Jets coach, after they're off to a 2-2 start, but there's great expectations in New York, New Jersey, the Meadowlands for that team once Aaron Rodgers recovered from his torn Achilles. And they have one of the top defenses in the NFL, which is still the case, but the offense is really struggling. So Saleh is under fire out east. Kevin O'Connell's riding high as the Vikings are about now en route to London. So it should be, as I said, a fun matchup this week to see how the Vikings can handle the Jets. The two teams last met in 2022 in that great 13-win season for the Vikings. The Vikings won that game 27-22 here at US Bank Stadium. Close game. Jets played them tough. Mike White was the quarterback that day for the Jets, threw a couple interceptions that turned the game around for the Vikings, and Justin Jefferson caught the winning touchdown pass. Yep. No surprise there from Kirk Cousins, of all people. And so now it's Sam Darnold at the helm, the ex-Jet. You talk about storylines for this game. There's a big one right there.
Can't believe it.
The Jets drafted Sam Darnold in 2018, number 3 overall, played 3 seasons with the Jets. Very lackluster, shall we say, at best. And then he was traded to Carolina. He and Robert Saleh crossed paths only for about 3 months. And that was really in the offseason before the offseason program began. So I'm not sure they had much interaction. But Saleh did talk highly of Sam Darnold this week. Let's listen to Coach Robert Saleh talking about Sam Darnold, now leading the NFL in passer rating, 118.9, and touchdown passes with 11. And the Jets, they don't have them anymore.
No, they don't.
Sam's gritty. He's tough. He's got tremendous arm talent. And, he's another guy like we talked about last week. You build around him. You build a good offensive line. You build good skill guys. You build a good run game. And you allow him you give him the time. They're doing a great job protecting him, giving him time to throw the football. And if you give a guy like him that time, he's going to kill you. And, he's in a situation. They've got a fantastic O-line, very underrated O-line. I think it's one of the better ones in football. They've got a great group of skill guys, and he's back there doing what a tremendous talent can do, which is deliver the ball.
Nice comments from Coach Saleh about Sam Darnold and also about the offensive line for the Vikings. Very high praise. We'll see how that turns out. The Jets come in with a pretty stout defensive front led by Quinnen Williams, the 2-time Pro Bowler, and they've got 14 sacks on the season, 5th ranked in the league. But who comes in number 1 in sacks? Of course, the Vikings, who want to get after Aaron Rodgers in this game. Rodgers, in that terrible loss to the Jets on a rainy day, but that's really no excuse for the offensive line playing so putrid. They gave up 5 sacks, 14 quarterback hits on Rodgers, scored 9 points in the game. Really a terrible outing. I think that's going to be certainly a focal point for Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator this week. Stop the run. Stop Breece Hall, who's off to a slow start for the Jets. He's only got, so far this year, Breece Hall, as I said, he's off to a slow start. So is Garrett Wilson, their starting receiver, or their best wide receiver. He's only got 20 catches, under 200 yards. Breece Hall's under 200 yards rushing, and he had almost 1,000 yards last year. So it's been tough sledding for the Jets' run game that's ranked 27th in the league coming into this game. Not very good. As I said, Breece Hall, 174 yards, a 3.1 yard average. He does have 2 TDs on the ground. Last year, he averaged 4.5 a carry. That's going to be a very big key for the Vikings. They want to stop the run, force the Jets to be one-dimensional, and then get after Rodgers in this game. And the Vikings have the number 2 rush defense in order to try to accomplish that. Kevin O'Connell spoke this week at his media session and talking about the challenges of going to London and heading overseas. Last time the Vikings were there, 2022, same year that they beat the Jets, they beat the Saints in Week 4 in London. That game, 28-25, very exciting game as we recall. The double doink field goal attempt by Will Lutz that ended the game victorious for the Vikings in that particular game. Here's Kevin O'Connell.
Just excited for this week. Been looking forward to this trip. A lot of planning's gone into it. We got to have a great week of preparation. I talked to our team about that today. That's been a real separator for us, I believe, since really the start of training camp, is our ability to prepare. Everybody getting the same amount of time, similar travel, all those things. It's going to be about what we can do with every moment we have to prepare for a really good team. Great quarterback, great coaching staff. A lot of skilled players on the offense to deal with for our defense, and attacking, impactful players at every level defensively that they have, and some dynamic kicking game players as well. So it's going to be a big-time challenge for our team. We got to have a great week of prep.
One of the big, I think, great matchups in this game, the Vikings wide receiver core, one of the best in the league. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, back from his ankle, had a great game against the Packers with the 2 touchdowns. Jalen Naylor's been productive all year, as long as he's not trying to return punts.
That's
But he's made a big catch in the game on the first drive, 31-yard gain on third and 14, which set up the first touchdown against the Packers. That matchup certainly will be one of the keys, definitely, in this game. The Vikings want to run the ball with Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler behind that solid offensive line that Salah talked about. And the Vikings come in with the 14th ranked rush offense, and they're going to go against the rushing defense of the Jets that's number 20. Their pass defense number 2. So obviously the game plan should be run the ball effectively, use play action. You can't forget about throwing to Jefferson, Addison, and Naylor. But this could be a week, Sam, where it may be more production from Addison and Naylor if they decide to put Sauce Gardner, who is a first-team All-Pro corner, if they try to lock him in on Justin Jefferson. And even a couple of years ago, before Gardner got there, Jefferson had a tough game against the Jets, and it certainly will be a challenge for the Vikings and for their top receiver. Let's hear from Justin Jefferson talking about this very important matchup against the Jets secondary.
They're great corners. It doesn't matter, which side you go to. They're great matchups on both ends. So, even the last matchup, it wasn't a big day for me yardage wise. We still got the dub, and I still was able to get in the end zone. But yardage wise, it wasn't that big for me. So, of course, this time around, I want to have a better yardage game. Of course, I want to get in the end zone. But it's definitely going to be tough going against those type of guys. But we live for those matchups. I always love going against those top tier corners. But I'm excited for the matchup for sure.
And actually, Sauce Gardner that was actually his rookie season in 2022. So he did take on Jefferson along with DJ Reed, another really top corner, Michael Carter. They have 3 good corners, but Sauce Gardner was there that year and part of that secondary that held Jefferson to 7 catches for 45 yards, but he did catch the winning touchdown pass, as I said. So Justin will be fired up for that matchup, and we know that, and so will Andrew Van Ginkel, who talked about Aaron Rodgers and the challenges facing the 4-time MVP, who is not off to a great start this year. The Jets passing game ranking 18th in the league, and that's not what they signed up for when they made the big deal with the Packers to get Rodgers.
Yeah, obviously playing in London, it's it's a quick trip. It's you got to get your sleep and get your body clock right and make all the adjustments that way. And I'm excited to play this Jets team that has a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and he can still sling the ball. He's still playing at a high level, so we gotta come prepared and not take this team for granted.
Yeah, you can't take anybody for granted in the NFL. That's for sure. We've seen that this year with all kinds of upsets. The Vikings have upset 3 teams. If you look at the point spreads, the last 3 weeks have been upsets in the Vikings' favor, but not this week. The Vikings are favored in this game. I think only by 2.5 points, which is a little bit surprising that they're not a heavier favorite, considering the Jets' offensive struggles, especially last week. And one of the big challenges for the Jets will be to get their penalty situation straightened out. They have 13 penalties for 90 yards in that loss to Denver, 5 false starts, which created a kind of a rift early this week or after the game between Rodgers and the coach, Robert Saleh, who said maybe Aaron Rodgers' cadence, which he uses to try to draw the other team offside, of course, and has had a lot of success in his career doing it, but maybe that cadence is drawing his own guys offside and creating all these false start penalties. So now Saleh did backtrack on that as the week went on and said, it's no issue. We're getting along great. Fantastic, Aaron and I. I wonder.
Some of those sideline videos tell a different story, Jeff.
Yes, they do. And so that will be something to watch, too, as we kind of go down the road here. But before we get to it, I want to look at a couple highlights of the Jets and look back a little bit on that Packer game. Let's hear from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. It's time to take the field in an SUV that's designed to be unstoppable in every pursuit. That's the all-new 2024 GMC Acadia. From its reimagined interior to its bold, capable exterior, Acadia is suited up so you can make winning drives wherever they may lead. Whether it's at home or away, your team will enjoy the ride in comfort with 3 rows of spacious seating for 7. Plus, Acadia comes standard with other winning features like heated front seats, remote start, and a 2.5-liter engine with a GM estimated 328 horsepower, or take yours to the championship level with available amenities like a panoramic sunroof or an off-road tuned suspension. Don't sit on the sidelines any longer. Test drive your new 2024 GMC Acadia today. Available now at your Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. So let's take a little peek at the New York Jets and off that dreadful game against Denver that they lost at home 10-9 to drop to 2-2 on the season. The Jets' season so far has been inconsistent up and down. They lost their opener at the 49ers by 13, but it was worse than that in the opening Monday night game. Then they beat kind of lowly teams in Tennessee and New England before their loss to Denver, who's got a good defense. Offense is terrible. Bo Nix only threw for 60 yards against the Jets, and the Jets still lost that game.
Unbelievable. Because
they couldn't get anything going offensively. But let's look at what the Broncos were trying to do, and here's a big sack late in the game that Rodgers coughed up the ball, and kind of a key play.
Jets trying to convert. Wilson in motion. Rodgers, step up. Rodgers is sacked and loses the ball. Scooped up by Denver. Play was whistled dead.
Yeah, whistle dead, but it was still a big play on a 3rd and 1 stop with 5 minutes to go for the Broncos. Again, talking about that pressure, and Denver blitzed a lot in this game. Well, who's coming to face Rodgers next? And that offensive line that we would call somewhat beleaguered at this point. They had 3 new starters this year, but they're struggling. And Morgan Moses, who is their starting right tackle, missed the last game. He may be out again. We'll see about that. Tyron Smith, they signed from Dallas. He's 34, 35 years old. He's given up a few sacks this year. And overall, they're just not playing great. They gave up 64 sacks last year and then revamped the offensive line. Well, it hasn't really paid dividends so far. And as I said, the Vikings have to be licking their chops. Brian Flores, if Denver had success blitzing, you know that Flores is going to come with the heavy blitz, and because the Vikings are the second highest blitzing team in the NFL, over 40%. They've been kind of going back and forth this year, a couple games, not so much blitzing, but still threatening to blitz. That's not necessarily going to confuse an Aaron Rodgers who's seen everything, but the pressure will. And as I said, you look at the non-production from Garrett Wilson, but they've got quality receivers. If he has time to throw, Wilson is a former Offensive Rookie of the Year. Mike Williams, they signed from the Chargers. He hurt the Vikings last year in a game here that the Vikings lost in Week 3. Now, that was obviously a different situation at that point in time with different corners especially. But Mike Williams is a quality player if he can stay healthy. And Alan Lazard, the Vikings know very well from his days in Green Bay, and has been Rodgers' number 1 receiver so far this year, even over Garrett Wilson. So we will see how all that plays out. But here's another example of the good Aaron Rodgers and the good Garrett Wilson on this long gainer down the sideline in that Denver game.
Nice job. Breece Hall, good protection on the blitz. Flag is down. Rodgers drops it in the bucket. Garrett Wilson, clean catch.
And that's what Aaron Rodgers can do.
He still has it.
Yeah, he's got the arm.
Yep.
Doesn't quite have the mobility he once had. Nor I don't think he has the confidence in this offensive line to hold the ball very long. So I really expect a lot of quick stuff coming from Rodgers, a lot of quick screens to the wide receiver, or short passes. Tyler Conklin, a former Viking, is the starting tight end for the Jets. Hasn't had a lot of targets yet this year, but he's a quality player too. So they've got plenty of weapons in terms of skilled players if that offensive line holds up. But I'm not expecting that they're going to hold up. Let's put it that way as we go into this game.
Sure.
One of the things the Vikings are going to be trying to do, and we talked earlier about those great corners for the Jets, Vikings are going to try to get the ball to Justin Jefferson in any game. And whether it's going against Sauce Gardner, whoever, I think that Addison and Naylor could have big games this week, even though DJ Reed and Michael Carter are very good corners. But let's look back at that fantastic catch that Jefferson made in the Green Bay game, late in the game, 4 minutes to go. Vikings holding on to the lead, trying to keep that Packer hot offense off the field. This was a huge conversion on 3rd and 12 from Darnold to Jefferson.
Green Bay brings the blitz in 5. And on the side, they're going for Jefferson in front of Stokes. And the catch stays out of bounds. I think that's a good challenge.
Right foot in, left foot drag.
That's a catch.
What a phenomenal play.
Just watching it again, Jeff. I mean, it's so remarkable how talented Jefferson is. I mean, to have the wherewithal to know where your body is on the field and just get that toe down. I mean, clearly a lot of professional receivers can do it, but he also makes it look really good, so there's that too.
Yeah, he's the best in the league, and that play showed it, and the fact that late in that Green Bay game when the Vikings needed to move the ball, that they trusted Darnold and Jefferson, O'Connell did, to throw a 17-yarder to Jefferson on first down, a 27-yarder, and all of a sudden they're in field goal range to take a 6-point lead to 9 points, which was really a critical part of the game as the Packers were in the midst of that great comeback. So certainly lots of great storylines this week. And just the fact that they're playing in London, I think it's a fun game to see. The Vikings, by the way, undefeated in London in their history, 3-0 in regular season games. As I mentioned before, the most recent beating the Saints in 2022 by 3 points there. I was even part of the first Vikings game in London way back in the early 80s. When I was director of operations, very early in my Viking career, we played the Cardinals in London. It was quite the event and quite the challenge for me as a young director of operations to take our team overseas. And fortunately, it was a preseason game, so it was a little more relaxed than a regular season game. But I remember our promoter was kind of a questionable character, and it was a very difficult. We didn't have the help of the NFL in those years, except for one guy they sent over to kind of help the cause. Now, of course, the league coordinates these international games, and so it's a lot different, but it's still a huge challenge. I know that logistically for the team operations staff for the Vikings, headed by Chad Lundeen, for the equipment department, for all the people involved to move all the team, the staff, and to set up operations there for 3 days, really, because they arrive on Friday morning. They'll have a practice. Then they'll have a practice on Saturday, kind of a walkthrough, and get ready to play on Sunday. So it's a big challenge logistically for a team. I think the Vikings have figured it out where they try to fly overnight, have the guys sleep on the plane, if they can do that, which is always a little bit of a challenge to do that. But I think that's what the idea is, and I'm sure they turn out the lights on the plane and say, "Go to sleep." But they'll arrive on Friday morning, and immediately they'll have a practice and a meetings, and they don't let them sleep until Friday night.
Wow,
really interesting, as I said, in terms of the planning that goes into these type of games. But the Vikings have done well in the past, and see if they can continue to carry that forward in the future. We're going to come back, and Sam and I are going to make our predictions on this game, and we're going to go around the NFL with some key games this week in the league, and the Vikings and the Kansas City Chiefs, the two remaining undefeated teams in the NFL. We'll talk about how this is all going to play out in Week 5, but first let's hear from the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
There are trucks, then there's the truck, GMC Sierra, with available features like the V8 engine, the ultimate luxury interior, and of course, the available world's first 6-function multi-pro tailgate. GMC Sierra, not just any truck, the truck. GMC's continued commitment to professional-grade engineering is on full display at your local GMC dealer. Come take a test drive today and see for yourself. We are professional grade. GMC. Well-qualified buyers get 1.9% APR for 36 months on GMC Sierra light-duty models. See your local GMC dealer today. Monthly payment is $28.16 for every $1,000 you finance. Average example down payment 15%. Some customers will not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 9/30/24.
Good news on the Viking front this week. TJ Hawkinson's practice window, as he comes off PUP from that ACL injury last year, his practice window is opening up this Friday. O'Connell announced this week, and so he will begin practicing. Doubtful that he's going to play this week because O'Connell said he wanted to kind of get him acclimated. I wouldn't be shocked if he did, but because TJ says he feels great, and O'Connell says TJ feels great. It's a possibility, but I think it's more likely, especially with the bye coming up, that they're going to wait and bring him back either against Detroit on October 20th or with that Ram game that Thursday night following, probably against Detroit, who actually is the team that he got hurt against last year, his former team. So, right. But it is good news that the Vikings are going to get one of their weapons, a Pro Bowl tight end back. Ivan Pace is also coming back into the lineup at inside linebacker, although Grugier Hill did a heck of a job in his absence and had interceptions in 2 games. I think they'll still use him in some of the passing downs because he's got a knack for finding the football. We talked earlier about keys to the game. Again, Vikings run the ball and then set up play action to use the passing game, but try to run the ball effectively against the Jets, who are weaker in run defense, and protect Sam Darnold when they do decide to throw against a team that can rush the passer. On defense, stop the run. Jets are struggling, 27th ranked, and then get after Aaron Rodgers. He's been struggling. His offensive line's been struggling, and the Vikings come in with that top pass rushing unit. If he does have time, then Gilmore and company, Griffin, Murphy, who the Packers went after last week, they have to cover some good receivers, as I mentioned, Wilson, Lazard, Williams, and Conklin, the tight end, where the safeties are going to have to handle him, Metellus, Smith, and Bynum. Vikings have figured it out, except for that fourth quarter against Green Bay. And as I said before in that game, they got tired from being on the field too much. And penalties are going to be a key to this game. The Jets were terrible last week in that regard. Vikings need to have less penalties. The big formula this year has been win the rushing battle, win the turnover battle, or be even on turnovers. They've done that 4 straight games in both of those categories, and they've won all 4 games. So that's another key. Special teams, always a key. Will Reichert off to a fantastic start, 20 for 20. Greg Zuerlein, the Jets kicker, has already missed 2 kicks this year, one from 40 to 49, 150 plus. He was 5 for 5 against the Vikings in 2022, but that was indoors at US Bank Stadium. So we'll see if the Vikings have an edge there, which they had last week with Reichert over Narveson, who missed 2 kicks for the Packers in that game. Predictions? Sam, I'm going to let you go first.
Oh, no. Come on, Jeff.
Okay, you want me to go first?
I could go first.
You go first.
Here's what I'll tell you. I think that Darnold, well, any player that plays their former team, they always want to have a big game. I mean, Aaron Jones is a great example of that last week. He tried so hard to get a touchdown at Lambeau. And I think Darnold, that's where the coaching will have to come in. And hopefully O'Connell and the coaches are telling Darnold, let the game kind of flow for itself and just take it for what it is. Don't try to force, especially don't force passes against this defense. So I think if Darnold's able to manage this game, just like you said, run the ball effectively against this Jets defense, I think that I think this one will be more of a lower scoring game, but I think you'll see a lot of the same trends where the Vikings come out early and they're scoring early. I think I still like the Vikings just to keep this rolling, Jeff. I really do, and I think they're going to win again another close game. I think they're going to win somewhere in the 21-17 kind of range. And even last week, I mean, the first half of that game I was wrong because they were up 28-0 at one point. So right. I was thinking to myself, well, this wasn't a close game, but then it ended up being a close game. So I don't think we'll have a repeat of last week. I think the Jets will be a little bit more consistent than the Packers were, but that's where I'm at in that 21-17 range.
I think I'm right with you, actually. I've got the Vikings 20-17 in this game. You're talking about 2 teams that are very good in points allowed, 2 of the best scoring defenses in the league. The Vikings are 4th, allowing only 14.8 points a game. Jets are 5th, 15.5. That kind of tells you it should be a lower scoring game. And with the Vikings not necessarily taking a lot of chances, trying to run the ball, trying to control the clock. And I think the difference in the game is going to be the Vikings pass rush on Aaron Rodgers.
Absolutely.
And I think that is going to be the telltale for the Vikings to emerge victorious in this game. So we're together on that. The Vikings see if they can do what we ask them to do and go to 5-0 and then get a well-deserved bye week to get a couple of guys healthy, guys like TJ Hawkinson, Dalton Reisner, their kind of reserve guard who was going to challenge Ed Ingram this year. Ingram's been playing okay. He's still, I think, is the weak link on that 5-man offensive line. But I think that Reisner's a guy that they want to get up at some point, too. Looking around the league real quick, some big games. Detroit's on their bye week. They're 3-1 behind the Vikings by a game. The Bears 2-2. Packers 2-2. The Bears host Carolina. You figure they're going to find a way to get to 3-2. The Packers are at the Rams. I like the Packers in that game against the Rams, who are beat up, and the Packers have a little momentum after last week. The Chiefs will try to reach 5-0 against New Orleans on Monday night. Dallas is at Pittsburgh, an important game on Sunday night. I like the Steelers and their defense against the Cowboys, who will be missing a couple of big pieces, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. Buffalo at Houston. Stephon Diggs gets his revenge game against the Texans or against the Bills, and I think Houston's going to win that game. So we will be back on Monday to break down the London game between the Vikings and the Jets, and look forward to talking with you then. This has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2024 GMC Acadia and Sierra on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via links from the 1500 ESPN and Score North websites. This is Jeff Diamond with Sam Bird, and we will talk to you Monday after the Vikings, they hope, beat the Jets to move to 5-0. Who'd have thunk it?